Hello, and welcome to episode number 33 of the Marriage Coach Podcast, where we are here to help you take your relationship from surviving to thriving.
Today on the Marriage Coach Podcast, we will be discussing from the marriage vows to have and to hold, for better or for worse.
Word can mean one thing to you and something else to me. Right. We also talked about last week the importance of the couple knowing these vows or receiving these vows in writing before they get married. And we talked about this being a great idea. And thinking about the vows that we're going to be discussing today, we said that this is even the more important to understand that if the couple get these vows ahead of time, they have time to discuss what these words and what these vows mean to them, these promises, these solemn promises that they're making to each other, so that there's no confusion on your part or my part about what these words actually mean. And the vows we're talking about today, to have and to hold, for better or for worse, are some very, very loaded vows. And these vows are loaded because we believe that they encompass so many different variances in our relationship.
To have and to hold, I mean, that means a lot for a lot of different people. And you know what? I want right away, I want you to leave your comments, what to have and to hold mean for you. But so what's having to hold mean for you?
I'm glad that you asked that, because we were talking, and as we were talking in the backyard and we were expressing what to have and to hold means to us, I told you that revisiting these vows to share with the Marriage Coach Podcast listeners made me think even more about how these vows are active in our lives. Right. So I thought about so many different variations of what to have and to hold means, the intent, the expression, and what it means in our marriage. And I thought about all the times that I knew you had me.
It's like you're mine. Mm-hmm. You're like, man, this is my baby. This is my love. Shante, she's my wife. Mm-hmm. It's something I can claim as, I can own up to it. Say, man, she belonged to me. We have each other. We have each other back. We have each other. No matter what happened, no matter what life may throw us, we have each other back. We're gonna be here for each other. We're not gonna let anything come between us. It's like the phrase that we said in the beginning of our marriage: "Me and you against the world." It's like, man, we have to have each other in this. Yeah. We have to be with each other. I have to hold you up, and not just holding you as support, but holding you accountable. Making sure, if I say something, you holding me accountable to it. Vice versa, you say something, I'm holding you accountable to it. I mean, so, having to hold, is very, very important.
Yes. And I mean, listen, we are touching the surface of these vows. When we started out, we talked about these vows being loaded. And I mean, the vows that we are dealing with today are very loaded. They're not to be taken lightly. They're not to be taken haphazardly, and they are not to be abused, because to have and to hold, that is something that is important. When we get to the for better or for worse, it's not about you abusing that the person is there for you for better or for worse. But to have and to hold means to me a lot. It means that I can depend on you. It means that I can count on you. It means that when I need a shoulder to cry on, it can be your shoulder. Right. It means that when I thought about it, I thought about in our marriage, the times that I've needed you to hold me. And when I say hold, I mean that in the physical sense. The times when I needed to hold you in a physical sense. And I mean, through something life changes, when we lost loved ones. I remember when your father passed away. I remember when things happened in my life, disappointment and circumstance. You're the person that I can talk to that grounds me. All of this plays a part of that, to have and to hold. Those that are single, before you get married, make it your point to talk about the vows, the solemn promises that you are making to the person that you are marrying, not just words that you repeat in a ceremony to get it over with. These things are the foundation for your relationship, something to hold you accountable, something you look back on and lean back to, because you're promising this to this person. You're intending to care for them in this way. I even when I was looking up the word have and hold. The thing, there was one thing that popped up, and it was talking about a term in real estate. And it was saying when you have and you hold the property, it means the property is in your possession and you intend to keep it. And you intend to keep it unless you desire or decide to relinquish it to someone else. And when I thought about that, I was like, wow, that's for those that invest in real estate. You understand that you hold a property, your home, whatever you own, you hold on to it because it's important to you. You have an intent for it, you have a purpose for it, you have something that connects you to it, and you realize how much it means to you, and you hold it dear to you. That's what I thought about. And it's just, I mean, it was very loaded for me. And there was so many different avenues to go along with it. When you take ownership of something, you take responsibility for it.
Exactly.
When you take ownership of something, you take care of it. When you take ownership of something, it has a value to you. When you take ownership of something, it means something to you. Whether you take ownership of your work, we know what taking ownership means. So we have to not look at it in a negative connotation, like you don't own me, but you have them. And that means they belong to you. It is something you hold dear. It's something you value. It's something you're responsible to, something you're responsible for. I'm responsible to love you. I'm responsible to care for you. I'm responsible to be affectionate to you. I'm responsible to be attentive to you. And I make it a priority to me because it's a vow. So I promised you that I would support you. I promised you that I would value you. I promised you that I would hold you dear. I promised you that I would be responsible to you.
Not to use you. I have a responsibility to protect you. Why? Because I can't use you, because if I use you, I'm using myself. If I'm destroying you, I'm destroying myself. If I'm abusing you, I'm abusing myself. So when we look at it, to the factor is I have. I have a possession. That means it becomes a part
of you,
of me. And that means if you hurt, I hurt. If you're sad, I'm sad, because we have each other. We are part of each other. And these things are very important. It's very important the way we look at our marriages, look at our relationship. And when we begin to look at our relationship and look at these vows, to have and to hold. Listen, to have and to hold. When we really begin to look at our relationship and look at these vows for what it is to have and to hold. And that's the thing you're talking about, to hold. I mean, to hold, that is very, it, you don't hold nothing you don't want.
No.
You don't embrace anything
that you don't want. Anything you don't want to hold, you get rid of quickly.
Exactly.
The things that we hold are things that we value. The things that we hold are things that are important to us. That's the same reason why the term is used in real estate, because it means that I want to keep this. It's valuable to me. It's a part of me. It's something that belongs to me. And that's the mind, the foundation of the mind for the marriage, that this is my marriage. This person is a part of me.
Really, and this is more than just me holding you like this. I mean, that's not, that's just, I mean, that's if you were talking about the level from 1 to 10, I mean, that's level one. That's level one. I mean, oh, I'm holding you. No, no, no. This is deeper than this. This is holding emotionally. This is holding. I'm holding you in my spirit. You know, I'm holding you in my heart. I mean, this is much more than something physical. I mean, this thing is intimate. I'm holding you. Matter of fact, before we get in the bedroom, before we get in the bed, even before we have sex, I am holding you before that moment. You know what? It makes sex easy. It makes intimacy easier.
Absolutely.
Why? Because I'm being intimate all the time, been intimate 24/7, down when it's time to what we call making love. When it's time to make love, it's easier. It's easier because now I'm not sleeping with an enemy. Now I'm not sleeping with a total stranger, because we hold each other.
Vows to have and to hold, revisiting the vows and thinking about what we were sharing with the marriage coach listeners today. The question I asked myself was, how do I see this walked out in our marriage? How do I see this come to life? And that's why I said it was loaded, because I see the holding, I see the having, because of the support that I have received in the natural, in the physical, you being there for me, you taking care of me, you being the man of the household, you being the provider, the protector, the person that brings the vision, that comes up with these ideas and all this. There's an idea and a vision that is for our family, and that's created because you and I sat down and we talked and all of that. And I felt like you have you have me as a part of you, because you always say I'm more concerned about you. I'm good, but I want to make sure you, and you always say that to me. So I feel like that's that thing, like, I got you, babe. That's like, no matter what falls apart, he has me. And then I thought about the holding, and the holding was not only physical but emotional, because sometimes you just need, emotionally, you just need somebody to support, which means listen to you, help you talk it out, help you walk, let you go through the tunnel and all that you need to go through, and then give you wise counsel and guidance, or either just be a listening ear, whatever it is. And that's how I saw it walked out in our relationship. Not just that you hold me physically, in the moments, you've held me when I've lost family members, you've held me when things have disappointed me, you held me up when I felt like I couldn't stand on my own, you also encouraged me when I needed the encouragement. So I just thought, I was like, man, this is so loaded.
For better or for worse. So we talked about to having to hold. So for better or for worse, what do that mean to you?
I thought about unconditional acceptance,
Okay.
meaning, when we got married, unconditional acceptance, for better for worse, is like you accepting me, flaws and all. Now over time, things get better, and so you love me in the better, you love me in the worst. That means when I'm being the very best of me, and when I'm not living up to what I can be or have the potential to be, that it's not just you just don't just write me off, because at this particular time I'm not living in or I'm not living out what you believe I could be. So I thought about that. I thought about you. You look, we both together bask in my strengths, because my strengths are beneficial to the relationship, but at the same time you don't discount me for my weaknesses.
All right. And I want y'all to do this. I want your listeners, I want you to also, for better for worse, I want you to put in the comments right now, what you thought of what for better for worse mean for you. I mean, because you're talking right now, and I was thinking about for better for worse. For better for worse, my perspective, just thinking through it, it's like one of those things, it's like through life, some life is oftentimes like a roller coaster. Life, we have our ups, we have our downs. Life is, I mean, it's like a roller coaster ride. You have those moments when you just bought your house. You bought the house or you bought the car, but now you got to pay for it. Things happen, you lose jobs and things like that. So you may have moments in your life where things, we had the money to pay for it. So that was the better time. But now, somebody lost a job and now we have money strain. And now the time is worse.
Yeah, and so for me, and that's good, and I get you. And for me, the way I see it
Mhm.
is, when I say unconditional acceptance, is like you just said, when we got married, I was 19, you were 20.
Mhm.
We dated, and to me, looking back now, I would say we knew of each other. We knew each other. We had spent some time together. We spent a lot of the time together, but we didn't know each other in the sense that we got to know each other after we were married. Like, whatever issues I had from my childhood, you didn't know that when you
Absolutely.
married me. But at that moment, when you say
Mhm.
for better or for worse, that means I'm taking
I'm
you.
taking
And when
everything.
these
I'm taking
issues,
your issues.
yeah, when these
Yeah.
issues start to come out, I'm
Gotcha.
still gonna love you. I'm still having and
Gotcha.
holding you,
Yeah.
even when these issues coming
Yeah.
out. When I say a unconditional acceptance, that means, okay, when these issues start arising, we dealing with that, I'm still here for you. Unwavering love and devotion means that when you're not living up to who you could. So I thought about it more in the personal sense. When I'm not living up to who I could be, or who you saw me as on that day or before we got married,
Yeah.
when I'm not living up to that, that it's not wavering, because you may see that she has the ability. There are things in my life, and I've said this in podcasts before. There are things in my life that I do that I never thought I would be able to do, such as doing this podcast. Never thought I would be able to do, because you saw something in me, and over you just kept talking, and sometimes nudge a little bit, nudge a little. Then after a while, it's like, babe, I'm doing this, I'm gonna do that. You like, oh, you gonna do that? Oh, you, and then I'm just doing it. And you like, I always knew you could. And that's what I'm talking about. Even in my strengths, it's beneficial to our relationship. And me doing what I do is beneficial. But what it's saying is that I'm still having and holding, I'm still loving you, I'm still in this with you, even in your flaws, even in your failures, even when you're not living up to who I know you could be.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you know what? That makes a lot of sense, because even people get divorced because they are impatient with
Yes,
the
with the
process.
process.
It's like
Yes.
there is a process. It's like, man, I'm working on me, you working on you. We're trying to be a better husband, better wives. And it's like someone is like, man, you know what? I want it now. It's like a microwave dinner. I want to press 3 minutes and it's over with. I ain't got time for the crock pot.
Yeah.
I don't have this time.
Simmering.
Right. I don't have time for that. And it's like, we really don't understand what these vows mean, because while we're standing there and we saying I do, it's like, no, you really don't. You really haven't thought about the process. You're just repeating. You're just going through the motions, because you're in this honeymoon moment, and you're going through the moments. The motion is like, man, this, you don't even know what you're saying. So this is what I want you to do. Single, married, I want you to revisit. We're going to be talking about
Yes.
this all month. Revisit the married vows. Revisit the married vow. I want you to think about this. And I want you to think about it, because this is what marriage is all about, for better or for worse. It's like, man, if I fall short, for better or for worse, if I
I'm
make a
getting
mistake,
excited.
for better or for worse, it's like a thing about it. We want to keep each other and hold each other at these perfect standards. But if we really think about it, the truth of the matter is your spouse is not perfect, and
Neither
neither
are
are
you.
you. And the thing
Absolutely.
about it is, like, in my imperfections, I want you to, I want you to have grace for me in my faults. But I don't want to have grace for you in your faults. And we can't play those kind of games. I mean, if we're gonna play this thing, if we're gonna play the marriage game, we have to play this thing on even
On a level
surface.
playing
You know
field.
what? Hey, what I expect out of you, you expect
I'm
out of
willing.
me. Because here's the thing: marriage is a partnership.
And when you were talking, I had to take notes. I had to write it down because I didn't want to forget this. And what I wrote down was what I expect, I'm willing to give. For
Hmm.
better or for worse. What I expect from you, I'm willing to give to you.
Yeah.
So if I'm expecting, you talked about seasons. If I'm expecting unconditional acceptance, unwavering love, if I'm expecting you to enjoy my strengths and not give up on me for my weaknesses, if I'm expecting that even when I'm not living up to who you see me to be or who I could be, that you don't run, then I have to be the same to you. So whatever I'm expecting, I'm also willing to give.
Yeah.
That's to me for better or for worse. And the other thing that I wrote down is we enjoy the better, because you talked about seasons. We enjoy the better and we endure the worse, because the idea is that I'm not just going to run at the first sign. Now, hear me good, because I don't want anybody thinking or saying that I'm telling you to endure abuse. But what I'm talking about is sometimes at the first sign of anything not lining up with what we want, we done, we out, we over.
Yeah.
You not, oh, wait a minute. When I married you, you had this amount of money and this and that. You don't have it. We done. And we can't do things like that. And even sometimes if a person falls on hard times, or maybe they find themselves in a dark place, maybe they're not where they could be, where they should be, instead of us loving them unwaveringly and giving them that nudge they need, that support they need, babe, what do you need to do? Trust me, I'm not telling you to endure foolishness, but we're talking about sometimes you have people that are trying their best, and because it's not what want it, or this is not what I saw, I'm done.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do that. And when you talked about seasons, you talked about the season when you're purchasing the house, but now you have the season where you have to pay for it. That season of paying for it can be compromised depending on if that person is if they're living their best version of themselves or their worst version of themselves. Because maybe we got the house and we moved in, but I'm a bad financial manager, so now we got some other issues going on. But at the same point, you're not going to run when that happens. You're going to say, hey babe, because you did for us, you did that. That's a whole nother podcast, but about the financial part. But when it wasn't, you ran, it was like, whoa, okay, something is not going right.
Right.
Like, okay, yeah, you paying bills, but we ain't got nothing saved. Something is not going right. And it took years.
Yeah.
I'm telling the truth. You right here, years for me to get better at that, to understand, and this is a different subject, but to understand the importance of saving. But you didn't run when you realized that was the worst of me. Like, yeah, she paid the bills, but she gonna spend the rest.
Yeah, and this happened, and this particular thing we're talking about, this happened. We were 26 years old.
Yes.
26 years old, and I have to be for the first beginning of it. I wasn't really, she was paying the bills. I wasn't even involved. Then we end up doing the financial analysis, and I'm like,
like what?
Yeah, and seeing the financial analysis saying we're in the hole. I'm like,
I was like, she don't know what she's talking
right?
about.
Yeah. So and that was a moment. But then I started looking and I got more involved. And I mean, in the beginning, you had this. I mean, later on, you said you felt some kind of way, like, man, I felt like, you saying I wasn't doing it right or whatever, So kind of, took it on the,
Yeah,
personal
took it on
side
the
or whatever.
personal. Yeah.
But then I looked and I found Dave Ramsey, and I started looking, I started learning. And I
See?
think I just shared it.
Yeah, you just said, babe, you sent me an email. I will never forget it because this was a turning point for me. So you sent me a link for Dave Ramsey,
Right.
and I listened to the link while I was working in the file room at work. I'm filing people's personal data for HR, human resources.
Okay.
And I'm listening to Dave Ramsey, and he said, and I was like, oh wow, oh wow. And it's later on we talked about it being some of the same stuff that you talked about. But the point I'm trying to make here today is, to me, I look at that as one of the worst things, because finances in marriages, issues with finances in marriages, and to be like, whoa, wait a minute, we in debt, where this come from? And I'm like, we ain't in no debt, we pay our bills, because that's all I knew at the time. And that, to me, it was like, hey, that's good, the bills are paid, but no, you don't have nothing saved. Anywho, you did not walk away during the worst. To me, that's one of the things. And for somebody else, they may be like, that's nothing, but to me, that's one of the worst. And that's, finances break up marriages all the time. So to me, that's what I'm talking about. So even if a person made a mistake, if they done something worse than that, we can get some help. Get some help. We both have to be willing to get some help. We both have to acknowledge. I had to acknowledge that I had a spending problem. I had to acknowledge that. And I had to do so. I started listening to Dave Ramsey. We started studying financial stuff, whatever it is. But to me, it means, for better or for worse, means not running away.
So for better or for worse, there's some marriages right now, probably be this worse, it's like, man, but for better or for worse. And in those moments of, those worse, you feel like, man, it's worse. It can't get no worse than this. Those the moments. And those the moments and those the times where I say, you're in a position to have your best fight. You're in a position to gain your greatest strength, maybe the greatest strength you would ever go to in your life. It's like the whole scenario. Nobody go to the gym just for, we don't go to the gym for fun. You're not going to the gym just to watch. You go in the gym to get stronger. In order to get stronger, you have to
Work.
you have to work. You have to, it's intense, your muscles and fatigue and all these different things to get strength. And so sometimes, moments like these can be the greatest moments in our life. Those moments when you feel like it can't get any worse than this. This is the moment where the two of you can get together And instead of fighting against each other,
Fight
fight with
together.
each other,
Mm-hmm.
fight together, and can really turn this thing around. And then that's what makes marriage stronger. What makes the marriage strong is what you've been through,
Mm-hmm.
and it's what you overcame. It's like, how do you know how strong a house is if that house never been through a storm?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean, it's
absolutely.
like I didn't realize, about our area,
Mm-hmm.
about the whole thing flooding until Harvey happened.
Mm-hmm.
When Harvey happened, I was like, man, we sustained this.
Yeah.
Our street didn't flood, so now people in our area are putting this, when they selling their home, it didn't flood during the Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have something to hold. This is something that happened. This is a storm that came, and my property
Lord.
stood the test
Mm-hmm.
of time. It's like,
Yeah.
that's how the marriage is. It's standing the test of time. So this moment right now, I know you right now, you looked up the Marriage Coach podcast and you listen to us right now, and you at the verge of getting divorced. You stumbled on this podcast. I believe God sent you here to listen to these words right now. It's not over. You're at a position in your life where your worst is just you going to the gym room and working out and strengthening yourself, you and your spouse. And if your spouse is not ready, maybe your spouse, you're trying to send the message, you're trying to send the podcast to them, and they like, I don't want to hear that. Here it is. You have an opportunity to strengthen yourself. In your worst, you can strengthen yourself. And by you strengthening yourself, your spouse will come along. They will come along and say, you know what? Because I see the change in my spouse. This is what happened financially. I sent you the link. The whole thing, I was worried about building myself. My focus was building myself financially, and I sent it to you. I shared it with you, and you watched it. I mean, that was several other things prior to the Dave Ramsey. The same Dave Ramsey was just, that was your turning point.
Yes.
But prior to that, there were other times.
Mm-hmm.
There were books I suggested, and you
Mm-hmm.
you refused it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever reason, you didn't feel like you needed it at the point. But I sent it to you, and that was the turning point. But in the process, you seen me grow.
Yep.
You seen me grow. You seen me
Yes.
grow as a
Yes.
leader. You see me grow as a communicator. Not talking about communicating as far as public speaking, but communicating how to deal with you, how to
Mm-hmm.
communicate with you.
True. True.
And
True.
from that grace, the walls that you once had up,
Came
those
down.
walls came
Mm-hmm.
down, and then that worse became better.
And that's exactly why all I keep hearing in my head and thinking is what you said. You enjoy the better, and I wish I could think of a different word than endure, because educate something you enjoy the better and you're educated in the worse. Maybe that's what I want to say.
Mm,
Because you enjoy the better. Everybody likes the better.
yeah,
We in for the ride in the better. It's the worst that we struggle with. But if we see the worst of our marriage as time for me to learn, time for us to grow, time for us to be better. So maybe not endure, maybe educate. It's the time for you to learn each other, to learn together, to learn. You had to learn how to communicate with me so that she would listen to what I'm saying, or what do I need to do to get her to hear what I'm saying. So educate, maybe in enjoying the better and educated in the worst, because when the worst part comes, how can we be better? How can we grow through this? How can we be or have the marriage that stands the test of time, so that we can reach back and tell another couple, listen, you can come through this, you can come out of this,
yeah,
you can have better finances, you can have a better relationship, you can have better conversations, you can have better communication.
yeah,
Whatever it is that is your worst can be better.
yeah. One thing I want you to remember: in the worst is where the growth happens.
Thank you for joining us today on the Marriage Coach Podcast. If you found this information helpful, we ask that you would like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you will be notified when we upload a video every week. If you're listening on iTunes, rate the podcast and leave a review. That helps us get the word out. And we want to invite you to head on over to our leadership podcast, Lead to Greatness, where my husband is interviewing entrepreneurs and great leaders every week.
So we want to thank you so much for joining us today on the Marriage Coach Podcast. Looking forward to hanging out with you again on next week as we continue to help you take your relationship from surviving to thriving. Bye. See you next week.